There's a moment that almost every man in a long relationship recognizes, even if he has never put words to it. It happens late at night, in a room wrapped in darkness, when the only sound left is the slow, familiar rhythm of her breathing beside you. This is the same woman who once reached for you without hesitation, whose touch felt natural and hungry, as if being close to you was the safest place in the world. Now, the silence between you feels thick, heavy, pressing down like fog that refuses to lift. You turn slightly toward her and place your hand on her shoulder. You do it carefully, slowly, with a mix of hope and restraint, like touching an exposed wire and bracing yourself for the shock. Instead of warmth, you feel movement, not dramatic, not angry, just a subtle shift of her body away from yours. A few inches that feel like a canyon opening up. No words are needed. Your body already understands the message. Then come the explanations. They arrive almost automatically, as if rehearsed. She has a headache. She's exhausted. Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow. The kids might hear. The day was stressful. Work has drained her. She promises it's not you. She says she just needs rest. You nod. Because arguing feels pointless, and because a part of you still wants to believe her. But this isn't the first time. It's not even the 5th. It feels closer to the 15th time this month, each refusal dressed in a slightly different costume, but all leading to the same result. You begin to recognize the pattern. Busy, overwhelmed, tired, stressed, always something, always later, always not now. What hurts most is not just the lack of physical closeness. It's the way rejection starts to seep into your thoughts during the day. You replay moments in your head. You wonder if you said something wrong, if you should have helped more, earned more, been calmer, stronger, different. You start measuring your worth in silence, in excuses, in the growing distance between two bodies that share the same bed but no longer share the same energy, lying there, staring into the dark. You may tell yourself this is normal, that this is what long-term relationships become. The desire fades and responsibility replaces it. But deep down, something feels off. This doesn't feel like a temporary phase. It feels like the beginning of a quiet erosion, one that doesn't announce itself loudly, but slowly wears away at connection, confidence, and identity. And this is where most men make their first mistake. They assume the problem lives in the bedroom, in the next part. We need to confront a harder truth, one that almost no one wants to face, but that explains why focusing on intimacy alone often makes everything worse. At first glance, the situation looks simple. A lack of intimacy must mean exhaustion, stress, hormones, or a rough phase. Most men cling to these explanations because they feel solvable. If it's tiredness, you can help more. If it's stress, you can be more patient. If it's physical, time will fix it. But this is where the illusion begins, because what you are experiencing is rarely a bedroom problem. It is a symptom. And symptoms always point to something deeper. When desire disappears in a relationship, it is usually the loudest signal that the system underneath is breaking down. Think of intimacy as a structural beam in a building. When that beam cracks, you can paint over it, decorate around it, or pretend it's not there. But none of that stops the collapse. Trying to restore physical closeness without addressing the underlying dynamic is like taping over a fracture in a load-bearing wall. The building may stand for a while, but the damage continues silently. This is why so many intuitive responses backfire. Men beg, they reason, they try to be more helpful around the house, they buy gifts, plan trips, offer massages, become emotionally available in ways they weren't before. On the surface, these actions seem loving and logical. In reality, when desire is already gone, they often communicate the opposite of what you intend. They send the message that you need her approval to feel okay, that your sense of worth is now dependent on whether she opens the door again. Desire does not grow in an environment of pressure, even gentle pressure. It doesn't respond to negotiation or obligation. When you plead, bargain, or overcompensate, You unknowingly step into a trap. The more you try to pull closeness back, the more she feels crowded. The more you explain how important intimacy is to you, the more it becomes framed as a duty rather than a choice. Attraction, once tied to obligation, withers. What makes this especially painful is that none of this feels fair. You are not being cruel. You are not being lazy. You are trying to save something that matters to you. But relationships don't operate on fairness alone. They operate on dynamics. And dynamics are brutally honest. When one person chases and the other retreats, the gap widens no matter how good the intentions are. This is the moment where many men exhaust themselves, pouring energy into the wrong place, convinced that effort alone will bring desire back. But before you can change anything, you need to understand what rejection is really communicating. In the next part, we'll look at why physical refusal is often the most honest language in a relationship, and why it reveals more than words ever could. Rejection of intimacy is one of the most honest responses a relationship can offer. Words are flexible. They can be softened, delayed, or shaped to avoid conflict. Bodies, however, are far less cooperative with politeness. A person can say, "I love you," while turning away. They can promise it will get better while avoiding your touch, but they cannot fake genuine desire for long. The body tells the truth, even when the mouth tries to protect feelings. You cannot negotiate attraction through logic. You cannot reason someone into wanting you. There is no convincing argument that creates spark, no explanation that produces hunger, no compromise that manufactures genuine passion. When a woman avoids physical closeness consistently, she is not being confusing. She is communicating with absolute clarity, even if the message is painful to receive. Desire shows itself in small, almost invisible ways. In eye contact that lingers, in a smile that appears without effort, in the way a body leans in instead of away. When these things disappear, it is not random. It reflects how she experiences you emotionally and energetically in that moment of her life. It also reflects where the relationship sits in her internal hierarchy of priorities. This is what makes rejection so difficult for men to process. Many men are trained to listen to words and fix problems. When she says she is tired or stressed, you take that at face value and look for solutions. But the pattern matters more than the excuse. One refusal can be bad timing. Repeated avoidance is a verdict. It is feedback about attraction, respect, and emotional positioning, not about headaches or long days. When a woman systematically avoids touch, she is unconsciously answering questions you may be afraid to ask. How do I see you right now? How do I feel when you are close? How essential is this connection to me? Her body responds before she has time to rationalize or soften the truth. This does not mean she is a villain or that she is consciously trying to hurt you. Often, she may not fully understand her own withdrawal, but lack of awareness does not change the impact. The absence of intimacy is not neutral. It reshapes the power balance in the relationship and slowly redefines who you are to each other. Most men focus only on the final outcome, the closed door at night, without noticing the quiet shifts that happened long before that door closed. Intimacy rarely disappears overnight. It erodes through dozens of small disconnections that go unaddressed. To understand this clearly, it helps to see it through a real example. In the next part, I'll tell you the story of a man who documented his rejection and discovered that the bedroom was only the last domino to fall. Jason was not a failing man by any conventional standard. He was a successful manager, disciplined, reliable, and deeply invested in his relationship. When intimacy with his partner began to fade, he did what many men do when faced with confusion. He started tracking it. For 6 months, he kept a private journal. Every rejection went into it, every explanation, every excuse, every quiet turn away in bed. At first, he believed the pattern would reveal something obvious, maybe a stressful work cycle or a health issue that would eventually pass. What he didn't expect was what emerged when he stopped looking only at the bedroom. as he reread his notes. He noticed small changes that had felt insignificant at the time. She stopped joking with him in the mornings. The playful teasing that once defined their connection disappeared. She no longer asked about his day unless he brought it up first, when they watched movies together. She chose the far end of the couch, a subtle but consistent distance that had quietly become normal. The refusals at night suddenly made sense. They weren't isolated events. They were the final expression of a longer withdrawal. Physical intimacy was simply the last place where the disconnect became undeniable. The collapse had started months earlier. But Jason, like many men, had focused all his attention on the most painful symptom instead of the broader pattern. What struck him most was how he had explained everything away in real time. He told himself she was tired. He blamed work. He assumed this was just what long-term relationships looked like after a while. By the time he felt truly alarmed, the emotional distance was already well established. The bedroom rejection wasn't the beginning of the problem. It was the conclusion. This is why so many men feel blindsided when intimacy disappears. They miss the earlier signals because those signals don't trigger panic. A laugh that no longer comes easily. A question that is no longer asked. A body that no longer gravitates toward yours. Each one feels small, deniable, easy to rationalize. Together, they form a clear trajectory. Jason realized that if he wanted clarity, he had to stop asking why she wouldn't sleep with him and start asking when she stopped choosing him in the first place. That shift in perspective was uncomfortable, but it was also liberating. It moved him out of confusion and into awareness. Not every decline in intimacy follows this path. Some are temporary, driven by genuine external pressures. Others are chronic, rooted in a deeper disengagement. Learning to tell the difference is critical, because responding the wrong way can do lasting damage. In the next part, we'll explore how to distinguish a temporary downturn from a chronic disconnect, and why that distinction changes everything. One of the most important distinctions a man can learn to make is the difference between a temporary drop in intimacy and a chronic state of emotional withdrawal. Life is heavy. Work stress, health problems, family crises, pregnancy. Caring for children or aging parents can drain energy in very real ways in these seasons. Desire may naturally decrease, and expecting the same level of intimacy as before can feel insensitive or selfish. But even in temporary hardship, connection does not disappear completely. A woman who still wants to be with you finds other ways to stay close. She initiates hugs. She leans into you on the couch. She talks openly about what she's feeling. Even if that feeling is frustration or sadness, she may suggest counseling. She may plan quiet evenings together without physical expectations. The effort shifts, but the bond remains visible. I once worked with a woman named Jennifer who was dealing with a serious health condition. Her libido dropped sharply, and she felt ashamed of it. But she didn't retreat. She explained what was happening inside her. She reassured her partner that her lack of desire was not a lack of love. She compensated with affection, words, and presence. The relationship bent, but it did not break, because both people were still facing each other. Contrast that with a different pattern. One many men recognize instantly. The same woman who is too tired for you somehow finds energy to chat late into the night with friends, laugh at videos, scroll endlessly on her phone, or enthusiastically plan weekends that don't include you. Fatigue becomes selective. Interest resurfaces everywhere except in the relationship. This is not exhaustion. It is prioritization. Chronic disconnection is marked by avoidance rather than openness. There is no curiosity about your inner world, no attempt to bridge the gap. Conversations stay practical, focused on logistics rather than feelings. Any mention of intimacy is deflected, minimized, or framed as pressure. Over time, you stop bringing it up because you already know the outcome. Understanding this difference matters because it changes how you respond. Treating chronic disengagement as a temporary phase keeps you stuck in waiting mode, hoping effort and patience will eventually be rewarded. Treating a temporary downturn as a crisis can create unnecessary conflict. Clarity protects you from both mistakes. The problem is that intimacy rarely shuts down in isolation. When the door closes in one area, others usually follow. To truly understand where you stand, you have to look beyond sex and notice what else has quietly gone offline. In the next part, we'll talk about the overlooked signs that reveal when someone has emotionally checked out long before they admit it. When physical intimacy shuts down, it almost never does so alone. Relationships are systems, and systems rarely fail in only one place. If you pay close attention, you'll often see that other forms of connection faded long before the bedroom went cold. These signs are easy to miss because they live in the background of daily life. But once you notice them, they are impossible to unsee. Start with touch that has no agenda. The casual brush in the kitchen, the spontaneous hug from behind, the way she used to rest her head on your shoulder without thinking about it. When these moments disappear, or when your body approaches and hers subtly withdraws, it signals something deeper than a lack of libido. If holding hands during a walk feels awkward or no longer happens at all, the issue is not intimacy. It is that your physical presence has stopped feeling inviting to her nervous system. Pay attention to kisses, not the quick, polite ones that happen out of habit, but the kind that last more than a second. When kisses become brief rituals rather than expressions of desire, the emotional current underneath has already weakened. The body is going through the motions, not responding. Another overlooked area is contribution beyond necessity. Someone who is temporarily struggling but still emotionally invested often compensates in other ways. She might cook your favorite meal, surprise you with small acts of care, or show concern for your stress even when she has little to give physically. Love finds a way to express itself. Michael, a man I worked with, described living with what felt like a ghost. His wife had avoided intimacy for 8 months, but that wasn't the hardest part. She stopped cooking altogether. She did what was required to keep the household running, but nothing more. Conversations were reduced to schedules, bills, and chores. There was no warmth, no curiosity, no shared emotional space. She was physically present, but emotionally gone. This is what it looks like when someone is shut down internally, not with drama or confrontation, but with quiet withdrawal. Many men ignore these signs because they are hoping the bedroom will somehow reignite everything else. In reality, the bedroom is usually the last place to recover. When you see this full pattern, it forces an uncomfortable question. Is intimacy missing because life is heavy, or because the relationship no longer holds emotional value for her? Answering that question honestly is the first step toward reclaiming your clarity and self-respect. But there is another layer that makes this even more complex. In some relationships, intimacy does not fade accidentally. It becomes a form of influence, sometimes without conscious intent. To understand that dynamic, we need to talk about power, need, and why desire can turn into currency. When intimacy disappears and stays gone, it often transforms into something else entirely. It becomes currency, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously. Physical closeness turns into a lever of influence. The more one partner needs it to feel connected, validated, or alive, the more power shifts to the one who withholds it. The dynamic is simple and brutal. The person who cares less controls the pace, the tone, and eventually the terms of the relationship. This is why so many men fall into a slow emotional starvation without realizing what is happening. For men, intimacy is rarely just physical release. It is how they feel chosen, grounded, and affirmed. When that channel closes, the loss isn't only pleasure, it's identity. Each refusal chips away at self-trust. Doubt spreads into work, friendships, even fatherhood. Irritation replaces confidence. Detachment becomes a defense. The cruelest part is that men who are kind, patient, and understanding often make this worse. They suppress their needs to avoid conflict. They become perfect roommates, emotional support systems, providers, and problem solvers, hoping loyalty and effort will eventually be rewarded with desire. Instead, patience is misread as weakness, and understanding becomes invisibility. No one feels deep attraction toward someone who accepts being unwanted. Energy never disappears. It moves. When intimacy, attention, and emotional presence vanish from the relationship, they usually reappear somewhere else. It may not be a physical affair. It can be emotional bonding, digital intimacy, obsession with work, or a private world you are not invited into. The key insight is this: the issue is not that she has no energy. It's that the energy no longer flows toward you. You cannot argue your way out of this. You cannot logic someone into wanting you. Attraction responds to who you are being, not how well you explain yourself. The paradoxical path forward is to stop chasing, stop negotiating, and stop shrinking yourself to maintain peace. Redirect your focus inward. Rebuild your body, your purpose, your social world, not as a tactic to get her back, but as a refusal to abandon yourself. Two outcomes are possible. Either the shift restores polarity and she responds to the man who no longer begs for validation, or you grow strong enough to walk away from a dynamic that no longer honors you. Both outcomes are victories because they return your self-respect. You are not alone, and you are not broken. You deserve to be desired, not tolerated. The moment you accept that truth is the moment the fog begins to lift.